Let it snow, let it snow. Look, boys and girls, at my beautiful masterpiece. Can you tell what it is? You can't? It's a bear in a snowstorm. Just kidding. This is just my paper that I'm going to use for my winter landscape. So you need a small piece of white paper and you only get one piece. So make sure you draw with pencil first. Now, this is going to be a winter landscape that we're going to be painting using watercolor paint and cool colors. So, whenever I'm painting, I always get a piece of newspaper and I put it underneath my paper. And my paper has a little green paint on it. I'm not going to worry about it because I could probably cover it up with something else. So the first thing I do is always the same. I pick up my pencil and I write my name. After you write your name with pencil, the first thing you're going to draw is a horizontal line. That line is going to be the horizon line. What is a horizon line? Well, it separates the ground from the sky. And since this is going to be a winter landscape, the ground is going to be completely covered in snow. So I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to lightly draw my horizon line. Now, it doesn't have to be a straight line because if this is snow, sometimes snow builds up and it can be curvy. Once you've drawn your horizon line, then you're ready to start making your special birch trees. Now, we are actually not going to draw the birch trees. We are going to be making the birch trees with tape. And you might be wondering, why tape? Well, if we make the trees using tape, not only will they be straight lines, but the tape will keep the paper white when we paint over it. Because birch trees not only lose their leaves in the wintertime, but the tree bark falls off. So the trees aren't brown like most trees. The tree trunks are actually white. So I'm going to start and I'm going to put a piece of tape so that it goes under the horizon line and it's going to make a vertical line that goes up and down. Now I'm going to do a few more trees and make sure your tape goes all the way to the top of your paper.
They don't have to go all the way to the bottom because the trees are going to have snow around them. I think I have room for one more tree, so I'm going to tear one more piece of tape and I'm going to stick it right there. Next up, you can use a Sharpie.
And dry erase marker also works. What we're going to use the Sharpie for is to trace around the shape of the tree and draw the branches. Now, in this project, we're studying texture. So with texture, you can actually draw texture to make it look like wood. The branches, I use curvy lines that get very thin at the end. And I make a variety of lines to make it more interesting. Because if I make all my branches exactly the same, it's not going to be very interesting to look at. After you've drawn all of your branches, you can also trace the horizon line. So I'm going to use it's not actually a Sharpie, it's an Expo marker, but it is waterproof. Washable markers won't work, but Expo and Sharpie will work perfectly. Okay, so now I have my trees traced. I'm going to trace the horizon line. And now I am ready to paint. We're using watercolor paint, so watercolor paint is mostly water. That means you need a cup of water, a medium and a small size paintbrush, and then of course watercolor paint. Now there's two different kinds of watercolor paint. There's liquid watercolor paint that already has the water added to it, and there's regular watercolor paints. These you have to add water to for them to work. Now I want to use cool colors only. Warm colors are red, orange, and yellow. Cool colors are blue, purple, and since this is winter time, I'm not going to use green because usually in the winter all the green dies, which is kind of sad, but it grows back in the spring, so that's good. Now, we're going to be using a technique to paint the sky. Remember, we're not painting the snow. This is going to stay white. But I'm going to use a technique called wet on wet. That's where you get a wet paintbrush, you get your paper lightly wet, just at the top, and then you're going to dip your paintbrush in the blue paint, and you are going to paint the sky. Now, I'm going to make sure my brush strokes go across the paper, like diagonal, no, not diagonal, horizontal lines. And if I add more water, it'll turn very light blue. So I have dark blue down at the bottom, light blue, and I can also add a little bit of purple in the sky. Cool colors make it feel like it's very cool outside. Warm colors make it feel like it's very warm. Now my paper is getting pretty wet. I don't want it to get too wet. But while your paper is still wet, we're going to add the snowflakes. What I use for snowflakes is actually salt. Salt, if you sprinkle just a tiny bit, make sure you don't put too much salt. But if you pour a little tiny bit of salt in your hand and sprinkle it onto your paper, this is regular salt. We don't use this for eating like you do at home. We use it for painting. And I'm sprinkling just a little bit in my hand. Now that I have some in my hand, I'm going to sprinkle it in the sky, and everywhere where the salt lands, it's going to leave a little white snowflake. Now once I've done that, I can add other things at the bottom of my landscape. So I can add a shadow under the tree, and I'm using my pencil to shade in a shadow that goes across the snow diagonally. You could also paint the shadow if you want. If you don't want to use your pencil, you could paint it. But I like to use pencil first. So now some people add a little fence in the background. So you could draw a little fence like it's in your yard. Or you could add a little bunny rabbit in the snow. Get creative and add lots of really interesting things to make your landscape as interesting as you possibly can. We're going to be using these for a project called Art to Remember, where you get to take them home and your parents can order these pictures printed off on anything you want. So you want to do your extra best on this project. Now, once I let the paint dry, the next step I would do next time is peel the tape off, and then I can draw the texture on the tree. But in the meantime, I'm going to trace and color my fence, and I'm going to take my time and do it as neat as possible because we want to do our best on this one. We're going to be taking these home to show your parents. So we're going to do our absolute best. So now my fence is finished. I can add some more details, and then I can let my sky dry and peel off the paint next art class. All right, good luck, and I can't wait to see what an awesome job you do.